Good day, everyone, and welcome to Three Hag Way. Year 2, we're in part 7. I'm not sure how we got there so fast this year, part 7 of 12. Today, we're talking about Jim Collins' Flywheel and Three Hag Way and how it all fits together and how you can use this tool in your company and with your clients. So let's get started. So I think everyone at this point, we're on part 7, knows why we're on year 2. It's all about iterating and evolving your 3HAG, keeping it alive, and keeping it true to all the things that are going on around you and in your company. So the biggest thing is that in year 1, we gutted out our 3HAG, and then we took all the steps involved in the 3HAG to actually come back around to confirm our 3HAG. We're never going to stop confirming our 3HAG. This is what will ensure our growth and our success as we continue to roll forward, working towards our goals. So just a quick intro. We have now 15 3HAG certified coaches. Congratulations to Bill Flynn and Michael Langout. And I know there's more that are will be certified over the next few months through their applied learning process. So congratulations. If you are listening in and you're wanting to know more about a 3HAG certified coach, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. These coaches are Canadian, US, Australian, and soon we'll have some European coaches up there to choose from. So don't hesitate. Don't think these coaches are too far away from where you are. One of the best things I did as an entrepreneur from becoming a CEO is get a coach. I've had a coach for over 20 years. These are the people who are going to ensure you reach your goals and help you and your team stay disciplined. So 3HAG workshops, we've got one coming up August the 12th in Halifax. Damien Byrne, Don Hache. I actually will be there. I will be in Nova Scotia for the month of August. Brisbane, Australia with Ian Judson, September 26th. October 1st, Phoenix, Arizona with David Chavez. Bill Napolitano is doing one October the 3rd in Boston, Massachusetts. And then we have November 20th, Nashville, Tennessee, Elizabeth Crook. So if you are not sure you need a coach yet, come to a workshop, bring your team, learn together. We know that teams that come to these workshops get on the same page very quickly and start driving to the goals and get your team aligned behind it. A little background, I know this is part 7, but just in case anyone's listening in just on the Flywheel and 3HAG Way, my background is over 15 years in building high growth companies and applying this system, the 3HAG Way strategic execution system. In 2014, we wrote down the metronome effect for all, so they have a prescriptive way to follow this system. And then in particular, we got really, really focused on one of the 6 systems, which is the strategic system and how it aligns to the execution system, which is what 3HAG Way is all about. I currently am part of an organization of 60 coaches worldwide, Metronome United. I've been coaching, I guess, since I retired from building companies in 2011. And we also have a platform, Metronome Growth Systems, which is a fully SaaS-based platform that supports everything that you'll hear about in this webinar series and in the 3HAG Way and Metronome Effect. So if you're not familiar with Metronome Growth Systems and you're looking for a better way to create efficiency and team accountability, please take a look at it. It really makes my clients' lives easier as well as my own. Key objectives of the day. Well, we're definitely going to challenge our gutted out 3HAG. We're going to do some internal analysis today. We're going to check on our strategy. We're going to look at your map out quarter over quarter. We're then going to go back and as we would and look at our 3HAG and see if we need to evolve it. I think the big thing around that is Colin's flywheel, the 3HAG fits right in between the benefit of the flywheel. So it's really important that we have a really strong flywheel in order to ensure we have the momentum to drive to our 3HAG. So if you've been listening in on this series, you can easily answer this question by now. What is strategy? Strategy is the creation of a unique and valuable position involving a different set of activities. And the key word is unique and valuable position. That's one piece, that white space. And then the other piece is what we have decided to be the set of activities that will put us in that unique and valuable position. And it's the interdependence of these activities that really get us a unique and valuable position and a differentiated strategy. What do you think about competition? Well, a lot of you know I grew up playing athletics and playing sports and being on teams, and we were always competing to be the best. And I thought as an entrepreneur, I was doing that as well. And I quickly learned that we're competing to be unique. It's actually safer and more predictable if we can get ourselves onto a dimension that avoids competing with others, with our rivals. There can be lots of organizations doing the same thing as you in the marketplace, but you can get onto your own dimension that is unique and valuable, and that you have done very particular things to get yourself there, and that you matter to your core customer who will buy at a profit. So Michael Porter's work was all about an external analysis, an internal analysis, a strategic evaluation phase, write your strategy down and execute. And what we learned over time is we just had, things, kept speeding up as we were growing our company. And so we had to just keep this process alive. And this is where the strategic execution system came from. Let's just talk about the 6 systems in the growth system. And it's really important actually to understand our foundation, even though we're talking about the flywheel today. So we have the CEO. We need to know our core purpose, our core values, our 10 to 30-year goal, our BHAG, as Jim Collins has coined it. And this is our cultural system. In regards to our cohesive system, we must have a team that's high performing, and high performing teams are cohesive, and we must have a framework and a way to put this in place as we're putting in place all the other systems. And these systems exist whether you like it or not. It's just, what is the existence? How well are they established? And then we have the human system, which is our way to attract, hire, orientate, train, coach, keep, grow A players. The very top of the house, we have the team leaders that actually own this with the CEO. And these 3 systems are our people systems. We've broken them down because we found that there were actions as leaders and as a CEO we needed to take particularly and be very disciplined around these 3 systems in order to ensure the team at the very top of the house is tightly aligned to where we're going. And everything that happens in the house, flows out to the team, and everything that happens in the market, the team who's holding our reputation in their hands in the marketplace will bring back the information that we need to ensure that we can continue to evolve as an organization. So inside the house, we have our strategic system that we've been working through diligently, and then we have our execution system. And an execution system could be the scaling up system. It could be great game of business. It could be EOS, traction. So these are things that really get a company going and, focused on executing cash, because most companies start focusing, and when we get into trouble, we go back and just go to execution cash. The 3HAG is tightly tied to the cash system. It's absolutely founded on that system. And that little gap that the 3HAG, fills in this view, it's such a small little gap, but it's such a key gap, because this is where we get strategy and execution aligned in working with a team that has a strong, cohesive foundation with the right players and a strong known culture. This is the growth system, and it is made up of 6 systems. The one system that hasn't been as prevalent and talked about it as much is there's one more system. And that last system blankets the whole thing. And it's almost overwhelming when you think about it. But it's the thing that most organizations have the toughest thing doing. And that's cascading out these 6 systems to their whole company to get the team aligned behind where we're going. Lots of teams are great at getting this throughout their leadership team, which is usually 10 people or less. It's harder to get it out further. And what this system entails is how do we as leaders become coaches? And how do we coach the next group who reports into us? And how do we help them coach the next group and so on? This is the coach cascade system that absolutely makes a difference in an organization for the behavior that you're looking for and the feedback and the alignment that we need to easily grow an organization. There'll be more to come on the coach cascade system. So why is all that important? Well, the most important thing is, as we're building a company, we want to be able to predict the future. A lot of people are uncomfortable predicting a 3-hag, uncomfortable predicting a B-hag, but that is what we're doing. And we're doing that aligned to our forecast. A lot of people are uncomfortable forecasting, especially cash first, but it's one of the easiest things you can do, as I learned along the way. And then profit, then expenses, then revenue, and then your widgets. Your widgets are the things, on the executional side that flow through your organization. And we want widgets rather than dollars because more people can relate to them. More people can get aligned to it. We want to ensure it absolutely lines up with our growth plan. We want to make sure it lines up with our growth plan. So the definition of a 3-hag, strategic execution system that drives confidence in predicting the future growth of your company and making it happen. So we need confidence in our strategy. And we get more confident the better we get at predicting the future growth. And the better we get at predicting the future growth, the easier it is to make it happen and make great decisions for where we need to go. So the big thing out there, and I know people listening in today, and I know the coaches listening today, companies do not have a 5-year super wild ass guess. This is amazing. What the companies have now is a 3-year highly achievable goal. And the 3-year highly achievable goal, even the first time you write it down, you're a little uncomfortable with that. But the more that you look at it, the more that you discuss it, the clearer it becomes, and the more confident in working with your team to figure out how we're going to get there. So the 3-year highly achievable goal, although we are predicting the future, is to simplify. And this is what I found as a CEO. This simplified my life. We had pictures about how we were going to get there. The team could understand the pictures and tell the story and get aligned behind making the decisions. We became very focused because we were looking at these pictures every day. This is where we're going. The clarity it provided based on things that were happening in the market was just something we'd never seen before. And then, of course, the confidence of every day, every week, every month, every quarter, lined up to the 1-hag, our 12-month goal, and our 3-hag. We got, stronger and stronger as a team in making the decisions we needed to drive towards where we needed to go. So the strategic system, as we talked about, there are 4 big steps there. And I'm not going to, joke with you. Those are not little steps that I just put in there. They're 4 big steps. And this is what makes up our 3-year highly achievable goal and actually drives everything we just talked about in that last slide, the simplicity of it all. You've got to do the work. Actually, it becomes more simple and more simple. And Jim Collins' Flywheel, we need to have momentum in the flywheel in order to be able to focus on our 3-year highly achievable goal. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. So Jim Collins' Flywheel, it's an internal analysis, which is great. It actually gets in a little deeper on our successes and failures and what's working and what actually, if we take this action, it'll drive us to this action. And wow, we're doing this well, and we need to actually drive it even faster. How do we do those things faster? And so this is an internal, and I line it up with the key process flow map, and I'll talk a little bit more. We have had, and we do have a key process flow map on our wall. So how does the flywheel fit into it? And I'll talk more about that. So let's get going. Let's jump into this. I want to spend the time working through this with the 3HAG coaches who might be listening in. If you haven't already done so, I was able to quickly drop this into Metronome Growth Systems under the 3HAG instance that you're all invited to. And the download's available right now for you. For all others listening in, the download will be available after the session today. It includes all the slides as well as the tool we're going to walk through. The tool that myself and my team created in order to work with some of the workshops. And it's a great tool to work with clients, work with public workshops if you're coaches, and if you're a team self-implementing, it's a great tool to guide you along the way. So right now, for the 3HAG coaches listening in, that is on Metronome Growth Systems. It's under the webinars in the war room. It's there for download. For others, it will be available at the end of the session today, along with this recording. So let's jump into it. So I always like to kick off thinking about one word. And the one word I want you to think about right now is I want you to come up with one word that describes your company's momentum. Come up with one word that describes your company's momentum. Okay? And if you're a company listening in, write it down. Even if you're a coach listening in, write down your own coach company's momentum. Okay, everyone's got a word? The word we're looking for, and the reason why I took company's momentum, and some people, when I've done this in workshops and whatnot, have come back and they're like, what momentum? There is no momentum. We're stuck. We've been stuck for a while. And in others, they just say it's flying along. It is growing, all those great words. And that's what we want to hear. That's what we want to be aware of. And this is an awareness question. So the word that we came up with was unstoppable. Once we get the flywheel going, once we have momentum in our flywheel, we want to ensure the flywheel is unstoppable. If you've heard Jim Collins talk about the flywheel, he will undoubtedly talk about the flywheel with unstoppable. We want to get the flywheel moving. We want the momentum moving. We know it's this giant wheel that takes a lot of effort to get going. And once we get it going, we want to keep it going. We know flywheels speed up and slow down. We want to ensure that the flywheel doesn't stop. I don't know if you've worked with companies as a coach where the flywheel stopped. I definitely have. And we've had to get it going again. I've also worked with companies who are just starting out to get their flywheel going. And then I've worked with companies who their flywheel is fully going, and what they're looking for is a great focused way to drive to their 3HAG. So the word I'm using today is unstoppable. That's the word I probably read the most and heard the most in learning about the flywheel from Jim Collins. And we know the flywheel originally was talked about in Jim Collins' book, Good to Great. And the interesting thing is that there wasn't a whole lot of information in and around the flywheel, other than it was studied, it was mentioned, but nothing more until earlier this year when Jim came up with the monograph to go with Good to Great, which is on turning your flywheel. And we'll talk more about that as we roll forward. But this is where it all started, with the study that Jim did on what takes a company from good to great. And it's about the flywheel. It's about the momentum in the flywheel and actually expanding the flywheel. So here's our growth system, as we saw earlier in this webinar. Where does the flywheel fit in this picture? Well, the flywheel fits right in around execution and cash. We know when companies are struggling, with their execution and cash system, they're usually struggling with momentum in their flywheel. If a company is easily, their flywheel is easily being pushed along, easily rolling along, the company is not as focused in execution and cash. They actually have time now to start focusing on the other systems. And we find this in companies who are just starting up. They focus a lot on their flywheel, execution and cash. Companies who are hitting a down cycle in their market go back to execution and cash. And as a coach, one of the biggest things we need to do is recognize where the company is and what systems they're focusing on. And lots of companies, when I've seen, they're heavily stuck. Their flywheel is actually stuck. They go to the strategic system, which isn't terrible, but they're leaving behind the reality that their execution system, that flywheel, doesn't have the momentum it needs in order to start looking further ahead into their strategic system. So the flywheel, we've got to keep momentum in the flywheel. That's why I say the momentum in the flywheel will drive your 3-hag. Is if you have the flywheel rolling, you then have the time to spend on the strategic side and driving out your 3-hag. So how 3-hag way lines up to this and where the flywheel fits, as I said, it's really hard to even get into all of this if we are stuck on execution and cash, if we don't have a bit of the wheel moving. Even when I go into work with clients for the first time, we spend more time on execution and cash and more time on the foundation 1, 2, and 3 than we do on the 3-hag. So when I go into a client and I work the first 2 days, I work more on foundation 1, 2, and 3 and on execution than I do on the 3-hag. And I do that to ensure that there is an execution system and a cash system alive that we then can spend more time on our 3-year highly achievable goal. If I find out when I'm working with an organization that it's not the flywheel, that momentum in the flywheel is not there through working with them on execution, we're going to spend some time to ensure we can get that going. And we'll probably slow down our steps around the 3-hag. So when we think about the alignment, and lots of us have seen this view before, we've always talked about it takes 1% of our time to write the plan down, 99% of our time to line up to where we're going, get the team aligned behind us. No different here. What I want to show you here is where the flywheel fits into this view. And what are the key components that help us actually be able to create the flywheel and get that up on the wall? So one of the key things that came out of Good to Great and Built to Last was Jim Collins' hedgehog. And he talks heavily about it in Good to Great. And Jim Collins' hedgehog is about, the core purpose of the organization, core business of the organization, and then your economic engine. So, can you make money at doing that? And the intersection of those 3 things is where your big, hairy, audacious goal comes from. So if you're listening in and you haven't worked through Jim Collins' hedgehog, I highly recommend it. It's a great way to confirm your foundation of your organization. Now, the other piece with this is that with the hedgehog concept, the idea behind it and why it's called the hedgehog concept, it's all about getting focused. And Jim talks about the fox and the hedgehog. And the fox knows many things. The fox is like a lot of CEOs out there. We know many things. And we get distracted easily. No offense, but we do. I can raise my hand on that one too. And the hedgehog knows one big thing. In a company, we need to get behind the one big thing. And that's what Jim found is in studying the Good to Great companies, these companies knew one big thing. And they stay focused on that one big thing. And that one big thing gets supported in this flywheel. The flywheel actually is one big thing. And if we can get the momentum going in that one big thing and stay focused on keeping that on track, it's much easier to be a great company. So with this, as we use this in our company for many, many years, Jim's questions are a tad different. It's what are you passionate about? And we actually use it as a core purpose. Why does the company exist? And it's no different. It's what the company's passionate about. It's why the founders started the company and why it still exists today. And then what can be best in the world at? That's your core business. If you can't be best in the world at your core business and not make money at it, so what drives your economic engine, it's really hard to come up with a big, hairy, audacious goal. Very, very hard. And so it's not a goal to be the best, not a strategy to be the best, it's an intention to be the best, a plan to be the best. It's an understanding of what you can be best at. And I highly recommend that you take the time and the step back to strengthen the foundation of your organization by working through Jim's hedgehog concept. So the big thing around the hedgehog concept, why companies go from good to great. Now, there's a lot of work to be done in the build-up, the level 5 leadership, the first who, then what, confronting the brutal facts, disciplined people, and then disciplined thought. And the interesting thing is that the disciplined people show up in the growth system in those 3 systems, the cultural system, the cohesive system, and the human system. And then disciplined thought shows up in around how we actually work together. The more cohesive we are, the more likely we're going to confront the brutal facts together. The more likely we're going to keep each other on track, focused on the hedgehog concept. And then the more likely we'll take disciplined action together to the goal that we've set. And so the flywheel, we need to stay focused on the flywheel. That's our disciplined action. And that flywheel, if we can get momentum in the flywheel, that disciplined action that we learn can help drive to the 3-hag. Wow, that was good. A little action there. Okay, so back to our alignment, we have our hedgehog that helps us solidify our foundation, get clarity in our foundation. I do this at least once a year with all my clients. And when I'm starting out with my clients, I will actually do this probably after about 3 quarters in around the annual planning session again. So I'll be actually preparing for the next year. We go back to check on this, to actually check on our foundation. Now, the flywheel comes into play, as you would imagine, all around execution. All around execution. If we can't get our flywheel going, it gets really hard to execute. It's not a lot of fun, and we're not clear on where we need to focus to actually get the momentum in the flywheel. And the thing that the flywheel is founded upon is our core competencies. Core competencies of our company. If you haven't taken the time to work on and to talk about with your team the inherent strengths in your organization, these are the things that your customers perceive you're really good at. And their perception is usually true on this. It's pretty rare that I've worked with a company that their customers perceive them good at one thing and they're not good at that at the core of their business. These are things that are good. Subservio and Paradata's core competencies. One was our servient mentality. We were just built on service. 2 was how we mapped data. And 3 was our ability, and I would say, this is more Subservio than Paradata, but Subservio was our ability to create that software subscription-based platform and knowing how to actually roll out the programs to make the platform active and successful. And those things were very, very important to our customers, but more important to our flywheel in order to actually build the momentum we needed in such a short time at Subservio. We're up and bought in 3 years. We had the flywheel cranking by that 12th quarter. So Turning the Flywheel, as I mentioned, is the monograph to accompany Good to Great that Jim released earlier this year. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend you do. It's 30 pages max. Maximum time would take you probably an hour to read. I've read it a few times. There's such good information in there, and there's really good examples in there as well. And we're going to talk about some of those examples that Jim actually recreated of flywheels of some companies that we all know. So the flywheel is in around execution. You can see our 3-year highly achievable goal is right in the middle of Jim's hedgehog and the flywheel. And so what we need to think about is, and I talked a little bit just now about Subservio generating that momentum. And actually, we had momentum in our flywheel, allowed us to really focus on our 3-hag. And with that, every quarter, every year along the way, took us directly out to our 3-hag. And we actually drove more momentum to our 3-hag because we have focused on what do we need to do in the first month, first quarter, first year in order to get the momentum going, so we could stay focused on our 3-year highly achievable goal. Now, the big thing around this, Jim refers to this as strategic compounding, which is that every push of the wheel actually compounds, and we keep, it gets faster and faster and faster. But we've seen wheels stop, we've seen wheels slow down, and so we got to stay focused on the direction we need the flywheel to go, and we have to stay in tune and aware to the flywheel. So the flywheel, as Jim has talked about, is a great way to drive the growth. The flywheel builds your momentum. You step forward. It's consistent. It's founded upon the hedgehog concept. The accumulation of the visible results helps, sort of energize and get people lined up to keep driving it. Now, the opposite of that is the doom loop. And I've been definitely in a doom loop before. There's no doubt about that. In the first 4 years of Paradata, we were in a few doom loops, trying to find our way to the flywheel that we ended up with in Paradata. And I share this with you because as a coach, we just have to be aware of, the company's flywheel, where we should be spending time, and making sure that the decisions that are happening of the team are not reactive, are not without understanding, are not, a quick fix to what we think, it should happen, which ends up with less momentum and then, of course, disappointing results. And then we keep reacting to those results. Definitely seeing companies get into a down cycle and they start to sabotage their flywheel. I'm sure the coaches listening in, I'm sure companies listening in have felt the same thing, whether in the company that you're in now or companies that you've been in. And it's a hard thing to take a step back to get out of and trust your flywheel and get focused on the things that you need to evolve in your flywheel. So I have a few of these from Turning the Flywheel from Jim Collins that he had put together based on his view of the company. This is Amazon.com. This is the first one he talks about in the book. And what I think is really important in these examples that you're looking at is that your understanding when you're building your own flywheel is that each of the components of the flywheel, there's 5 components in this flywheel: lower prices on more offerings, increase customer visits, attract third-party sellers, expand the store, extend distribution, grow revenues per fixed costs. So those are what we call a component of the flywheel. You've got to come up with what the components of your flywheel is. And the key is it's not a static list of we do this and then we do this and then we do this and then we do this. That's really nice. I'm sure you do that. It's about one component catapulting you into the next component. This is how we get the momentum in the flywheel. So because of Amazon's lower prices on more offerings, right, it shot them to the next component, which increased customer visits. Increased customer visits drove the ability to attract third-party sellers. The ability to attract third-party sellers allowed Amazon to expand the store and extend their distribution, which then allowed them to grow their revenues per fixed costs, which drives them back to the top of the wheel, lower prices and more offerings. There's a couple things, and we're going to work through how you get to a wheel like this. I use this one, I have a few others, because most people understand Amazon today. And I'd be surprised if anyone listening in hasn't shopped at Amazon today. The big thing here is two things that are really important. One is that we brainstorm and come up with the components of the flywheel. And the second thing, it's important we get the right components, but the second thing is that we get the components in the right order with the starting component at the top of the wheel. So Amazon's kickoff component, the top of the wheel component, is lower prices and more offerings. That's what catapults it to the next step, which is increase customer visits, which goes to the next, attract third parties, which goes to the next, expand the store, extend distribution, which goes to the next, grow revenues. Okay, so these are the things that people do get stuck on and sometimes even give up on. And from my view is, as you know, it's all about gutting it out. And the first time around, yep, you're going to be maybe feeling uncomfortable and gutting it out. But remember, the whole thing around all of these great tools that exist out there, this one I love because it's a tool that stays alive, it stays with us. You can leverage it in your day-to-day, leverage it with your team. You can score it. You can actually line it up to your key process flow map that's alive every day. So we just, the thing about these tools is it's about the discussion. It's about the focus. It's about keeping it in front of us. So here's another one I pulled out. I pulled this as an example. You might not know where elementary school is. It's a school on a base in the U.S. that was having issues, with getting really good results from their students. And, they said, well, what should that be all about? So at the top of their flywheel, they started their flywheel off with select teachers infused with passion. And that will catapult us in to then building collaborative improvement teams. And that will catapult us into assess student progress early and often. So we're engaged, we're keen, which should achieve learning each and every kid. So where they need to be, when they need to be there. Enhance of reputation is a great place to teach, which should then help replenish the passionate teacher pipeline, which then we can select teachers infused with passion. So I think, listening in, each one of these drives us to the next one, which drives us to the next one. This is Intel's flywheel, and it's around, and Intel being the chip company and maker. So at the very top of their wheel, design new chips that customers crave. Okay, which catapults them into price high before the competition can catch up, right? Which then drives down the unit costs, right? Which then we're going to harvest profits even as prices fall, because once the competition catches up. And then they're going to reinvest profits into R&D, so they have a new chip design that customers crave. Okay, so one leads to the other, and the more they do this, the more they get better, the more the wheel will take momentum. This is Giro. This is a bike helmet. This is actually a really good story on how this one happened, but Giro is all about invent great products is at the top of their wheel. And then if they have great products, it will get elite athletes to use them. They'll want to use them. They'll then inspire the weekend warriors to want to be like those elite athletes, which will attract the mainstream customers to want them too, which will build the brand power, which then allows them to set high prices and channel profits back into inventing great products. Okay, so I'm sure you're getting the idea of this. Let's move on to how do we capture your flywheel? And these are the steps recommended by Jim Collins in his Turning the Flywheel monograph. And there are 6 steps, and we're going to break them down one by one. And I've done this with quite a few clients based on these steps, and some public workshops that have gone really, really well. And the feedback we're getting in, the sort of the best part of this is step 1, 2, and 3 is some of the best discussions that the teams, my clients, have had around their organization in a long time, just around successes and failures, and really digging into the things that are really helping the company drive forward, and the things that are holding them back, and the things that are failing that they need to be successful. And so I did a workshop about a month ago with, there's probably about 80 people in the workshop. It was with my CEO roundtable and their leaders. And we worked through this process. And the first half of the morning, we worked through step 1, 2, 3. In the back half, we did step 4, 5, and 6. And we're just going to step through it one by one. So what you see here is what I mentioned is the tool that we created based on these steps, just to help guide the conversation in that workshop, because we had so many people and so many teams. It just helped everybody be able to work individually and then collaboratively. If I was working with just a team, a client, I'd be using my good old trusty Post-it notes and marker, still getting everyone to work individually and then share the answers on Post-it notes up on the wall so we can see each other, how aligned we are, how different we are, and get the collaboration going that way. So let's jump in. So step 1 of this, the first step you want to take is with the team you're working with, you want to brainstorm a list of significant, repeatable successes your company has achieved. My best recommendation is individually brainstorm these significant, repeatable successes. So each leader by themselves, let them brainstorm the significant, repeatable successes. Then one by one, share them so you have one big list to review. Okay, so the end of this will be one big list. So when we were working in the workshop, I had given an extra piece of paper to all the teams. So that was like their company, their team one. And, as they went through the significant repeatable successes, they actually made a list of them in that column. If I was working with a team, with one leadership team, I would just create this up on an easel, all the Post-it notes up on one sheet of paper and create that one big list for review, because as we work through the steps, we need to look back. Okay, and I would do this, that same thing with Post-it notes if I was working with a team directly. If I'm working in a workshop, I would use this tool to help guide the conversation and the individuals in the workshop so they can stay focused. So once we have a list of repeatable successes, and everybody loved that step, as you would, these are repeatable successes of your organization. The next step is, with your team, brainstorm a list of failures and disappointments. So these should include your new initiatives and offerings by the company that have failed or fell far below expectations. And these lists were really widespread, but you're going to do the same thing. Individually brainstorm these failures and disappointments. So if there's 5 leaders will come up with a list, then one by one share them for one big list to review. Either keep track of them on their own piece of paper using this tool, or up on the board for everyone to see, especially if you're in a team environment. Okay, and this takes time, and let the team have time. Don't rush this section. Let them stop and talk about it. Because when we get to the next section, which is compare the successes to the disappointments, right? We want to have a chance to talk about this. And so getting them up on a board, getting them, side by side in columns is a good way to have a discussion about this. And so in this particular case, I've seen different ways to do this, but going one by one, comparing the success to disappointment. Some of them are repeatable successes that I've worked with clients on, are in direct result of a failure. They learned something from that failure, and it created the next repeatable success. In other cases, the failure was something that they need to be a repeatable success. It's going to be a component in their flywheel, and it's not going so well. So these are the things we need to highlight, because what we want to come out of this, compare your success, your repeatable successes and disappointments / failures, we want to come out with a list of components that should be in the flywheel. So as we individually brainstormed and then shared, number one, step one. Step two, we did the same. Step three, we're going to have a discussion. And to close out step three, what I got the teams to do is, after the discussion, again, brainstorm individually the components of the flywheel based on the discussion we had around the repeatable successes and disappointments. Now, when I was originally putting this together for the workshop I did a month ago, I was thinking that teams might get stuck on this one. After, comparing successes and disappointments, brainstorm individually the components. I was absolutely wrong. I didn't see any teams get stuck on coming up with the components. They were able to come up with the components, and they did it individually, because the next step, what I wanted the individuals to do, is I wanted them to actually sketch the flywheel individually, so that if there was a team of 10, there was 10 flywheels. Yeah, I know. If you think that's too much, you can get into 2s or 3s. I did do it all individually. It seemed to work fine. There was lots of sharing, lots of collaborating to come up with that one flywheel. So each team individually took, the components they came up with. They brainstormed and they did create their flywheel. Then each of the team members shared their flywheel. And then what they did is, the flywheels weren't that different, is my observation. The toughest thing and the most interesting thing for me is that the top of the flywheel was different. And it was great to hear the teams, defend why they thought the top of the flywheel was, the component that they had chosen. So this section as well, you need time to actually give the individuals a chance to sit down and brainstorm their flywheel. If you're going to do it in 2s and 3s as you break up the leadership team, that is fine too. You still need time for that. And then you need time to bring the flywheels back together. And I get them to come up and present them no different than we would do a key process flow map up on the wall, so we can look at them all together. And then we want to come out with one flywheel as best we can. We want to come out of this section with one flywheel. Now, this is uncomfortable for sure. It's their first time doing it. Some companies I've been working with had a flywheel and things have changed, or they're coming in to validate it. These are great times to do it, especially leadership teams evolve in a high growth company. So we get a chance to actually go back and talk about all of these things, from step one, the repeatable successes, to the failures, and so on. So then the step 5 is, if there's more than 6 components, we need to consolidate, keep it simple, keep it simple, keep it simple. We know that. So we need to keep it simple. I've seen flywheels with 4 components. I've seen flywheels with 6 components. I just want to say at this point, 6 or less is bestly, what Jim recommends and what I've observed in working with companies. Keep it high level, keep it simple. Discuss with the teams if you've got too many. But in that last step, if you had 8, say you came up with 8 components, leave 8 there. You're going to go to this step and try and consolidate. But if you can't consolidate at this stage when you're working through it, don't fret over it. Don't force it. Put it up there and leave it up there as 8 for now. We're going to iterate and evolve this like we always do. So, don't get caught up. Oh, I don't have 6. I don't have 5. I don't have 4. It's amazing that we can get the wheel up there. The most important thing at this stage is the order of the wheel, right? So we got to get the wheel up there. We want to actually have our best view of the order of the wheel, starting at the top of the wheel, going to the right. And then we want to make sure that each component absolutely catapults you into the next one. And so that comes to the next step, where we want to test the flywheel against your list of successes and failures. And we want to score each component in the flywheel, either red, yellow, green. That's what most of my organizations do that I work with, or on a scale of 1 to 10. I've had a few companies do it that way. And so if we think about this as a group, we want to discuss how the flywheel compares to the successes and failure. That just helps sort of close the loop on this big discussion we've had. And then once you've done that, once you've had a discussion around that, it's nice, you get to go back and have a look at what's in that list. And there's been a few surprises along the way. That's what's actually in that list, which I think is pretty cool to see, and the connections of it. But what I find has been really great is scoring the components in the flywheel. What is working and what is not? For organizations that have good momentum in their flywheel, all the components will be green. They just need to make it go faster. For components that have, if you look at this example, where you have red on the second component of the flywheel, that means that the flywheel isn't moving very well. It's probably stuck. You know, they're really working hard to get the flywheel going. Usually means you got to focus in on that component and get it, you know, from red to yellow, yellow to green. Because if we can't get all the components in the flywheel, and we want to keep them green, that's our ultimate state. But we need to be aware of what components aren't working. And usually these components, you know, interestingly enough, line up to areas of our key process flow map that are the same color. And these are usually things we're doing in that functional area that absolutely align to that, you know, functional success of the organization. So I get the companies to go red, yellow, green. It's very, very eye-opening when the team does this. I have seen teams just, you know, are a little bit more relieved, and, you know, because they have been feeling this all along the way. Now, I've had leadership teams get all the way to this point, not necessarily show the bigger leadership team or the rest of the company what they colored the flywheel, but they get the rest of the company to score the flywheel, red, yellow, green. And again, the response of that has been really great, because it allows everyone to have a good objective discussion around what's not working well, what is preventing us from getting the momentum we need to actually, you know, get the flywheel moving, so we can focus on our 3-year highly achievable goal, so we can focus on our strategy. Okay. So I'm just going to pop that up now. I just have a little technical. I just want to have a little, okay. Okay. So here we go. The last thing I want to talk about is, now we have the flywheel. Okay. And you have, you know, maybe it's the first time, as I said, your company's done this that you're working with, or you had one, but you forgot to go back and look at it. This is a very active picture, no different than all the others. And it's funny, I usually pull out the flywheel when I feel the company really slowing down. Like in this last picture where I showed you, I actually have a company that looks like this in their flywheel and had been struggling for a little bit. And it showed in their key process flow map, but we couldn't get specific enough. So the flywheel helped us get more specific on what we needed to hone in on, that we needed to turn the dial so we could get the wheel going. Okay, so how does the flywheel align to the key process flow map state? So the good news is it lines up quite nicely. These components in your flywheel are usually smaller functional things in each of these really high level functional view of your organization. And, you know, funny enough, I use a Paradata example. And if you line this up to the flywheel, usually the things that are red and yellow line up to your key process flow map. Your key process flow map is a functional view of your flywheel. It actually should line up color for color in the areas, you know, the red that is in the flywheel there on the left should line up to the red that's in the key process flow map under sales, and the yellow should line up to implementation. These are not one-for-one function to components in your flywheel. That's not the idea behind this. As you can see, the components in the flywheel that I showed you those examples of, those are very specific things. And they will all map to the functional areas of your organization. But if you're feeling the pain in a key process flow map somewhere that's red, it's normally there's a red component that corresponds in your flywheel. It's very rare that these colors do not align. So when I'm working with an organization, this is the last step I do, is line up the flywheel colors, what they call red, yellow, green, and double check it with their key process flow map and vice versa. Okay, so if I'm sure you have a key process flow map on your wall. The key to it is keep it alive, keep it colored, right? Get your flywheel up next to it, right? Get that, nice and scored. They line up quite nicely. Another thing that lines up nicely from the key process flow map to the flywheel is you can actually come up with, measures of your flywheel and the components in the flywheel. No different than, and I say measures because there's usually some widgets flowing through your flywheel as there's widgets flowing through your key process flow map. So very, very foundational executional views. And these views should align, and your organization will absolutely love both views. But I always do the key process flow map first. And the reason I do that is just a higher level view. It's usually easier to get teams to do this quickly. They relate to it. And people get stuck, into the detail of the flywheel, into the components. Is why I like to do it later. If I found that the company was stuck, earlier than what I thought, as I said, when I do a kickoff and we do a 2-day kickoff and we spend, a good full day on execution, day 2 is all execution. And I feel that there's lots of stucks there. We're going to do our best to get a plan out, but some of the follow-up activity could be getting clarity on their flywheel. Okay, so this is how it actually, comes together, is through the widgets. We actually, why I'm showing you more outcomes, because we know the functional review, the key process flow map, including the flywheel, execution, and cash are foundational to actually allowing us to get time to spend on our strategy, right? So if we can keep moving it along, but if our flywheel is stuck, we must stop and actually focus on getting the momentum back in the flywheel. Companies do this inherently, but as a coach listening in, as a CEO listening in, as leaders listening in, we need to be aware that we are stuck in our flywheel and we must get focused to get the flywheel moving again. Okay, so what are the next steps? Keep the flywheel on the wall. I can't recommend that enough. Keep the colors on it, get some widgets up there, keep it alive. Compare it and align it to the key process flow map. Share with the bigger team and get them to rate how well the components are functioning. This was eye-opening for my client when we did this. We did this not too long ago. And discuss as a team what components you need to focus on for the next 90 days to improve, meaning get it from red to yellow, yellow to green. And then once we get this going, then we need to line it up to our 3-HAG. That's the future, right? We need to line up our flywheel to our 3-HAG. Okay. So to wrap this up, I know I'm running in just to the last few minutes. Next month, we're going to actually dig deep into the hedgehog, BHAG, core competencies. I just thought after this session, taking that step back and digging in there and working through that, there's a lot of other tools that can help us even get clearer. Jim Collins' hedgehog is one, but there's a few others that we've used along the way to really help us get that foundational clarity we need, because though that is foundational to the flywheel, to the momentum you need to drive your 3-HAG. So there's our steps, right? We've gone, this internal analysis is your flywheel. I appreciate everyone listening in, feedback that's coming in. It's really, really helpful. I found this to be quite I would say I've been unsticking some of my companies who have been stuck for a little while in their flywheel in one of the areas, and they just couldn't get their heads around it. They were really, trying to, get in there and get their execution cash system back in place. The flywheel absolutely aligns to us predicting the future and predictability. Because if we can just get it going, it gets easier for us to focus on predicting the future and spend the time we need to align the team and drive and make the decisions to where we're going. Widgets are quite key to this. As we know, the key process flow map is really key. The flywheel is another key component, as well as with our strategy. Nothing happens unless we have that foundational core customer correct. That's the foundation of our strategy. And those two things together drive our strategic execution system. So the next session is August 6th, 9 a.m. Pacific. We're going to do Hedgehog, BHAG, core competencies, and of course, how it aligns to the 3HAG. The recording will be available as always. The slides and tools will be available for download. Lots of great tools and resources out there. There's more and more coming along. If you're interested, don't hesitate, but get your team, and I say your whole team, to a workshop. It's the teams that show up at these workshops walk out with a great return on investment and that much further ahead than they thought they'd be in that 4 to 8 hour period. Thank you for all the support along the way. Each and every month, the feedback's been incredible, and I certainly appreciate it. So if you haven't read the books, read the books. If you're not using Metronome Growth Systems as a platform to make it more efficient for you as a coach and for the companies out there, it's efficiency and team accountability. It's a behavior that Metronome Growth Systems drives all around your people systems to ensure you can go from good to great. Engage a coach if you want to go faster. I can tell you that. I was a self-implementer back in the day. And keep coming back to the webinars. I'm having a ball creating them, and I love all the feedback. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.